Oh, it's the
So
best.
what are you up to right now? Are you like in the like prepping a project? Or are you in the middle of something? What's happening?
Not on a project or anything. I have an interview coming up, so I'll be prepping that, next couple days. But yeah, other than that, I'm just chilling.
Good. I mean, it's good if you know when your next one is. At what point do you get nervous? Like, oh, I need to work.
It's a good question. Um, I mean, I feel like it used to be a lot shorter. It used to be like, why am I not working tomorrow? But
Yeah.
now I feel like I have experience and history of like knowing that a project will come up most likely throughout the year. So it's just I've gotten that mental, block a little bit better. So now like I could go months and be okay in my mind, because it's like I have savings, monetary savings. I know something's gonna come up eventually, and so like yeah, months. But it used to be like days, if not tomorrow.
That's a good place to be, though. The confidence of knowing, yeah, the next one's coming in a
Yeah,
little.
enjoy life, while in the meantime.
Yeah. Yeah. That was why the freelance life for me didn't quite work out because I was just so like, I don't know when the next one's going to come, even though it always would. I just couldn't live
Yeah,
in that, when is it coming? The security
yeah,
part.
no, I feel you. There was a lot of that for a long time, especially after AFI. Like
Yeah.
at least 5 to 8 years for sure after AFI. So within the last like 2 to 4 years, basically, like is when I got a little bit more grounded on my like mental health. So
Yeah. So remind me, what year are you? AFI?
same as Yoko and Chloe. So 2014.
2014. All right. So you're exactly, I mean, almost exactly 10 years out. Yeah.
The 10-year reunion. Yeah.
Is somebody planning one?
Yeah. Saba is planning one for, I think, in June.
Cool.
So that'll be
Nice.
dope.
Memorable year, a lot of breakouts like yourself. So that's what we want
Yeah.
to talk about, like after film school. It's interesting though, you bring up Chloe, like I remember people always saying, like, for directors, like, you gotta give it 10 years, which sounds like an eternity. That scares people off.
It
Did
really
anyone
does.
tell you cinematography wise, like what you should expect?
Hmm. It's a good question. I don't think anyone really ever told me how long it'll take to like break out, break through like directors. I've heard that directors like 5, 10 years. I've heard that before, but I don't remember anyone saying cinematography wise, like, oh, like expect to wait 5, 10 years. Like, I don't know. I think it could be super fast for DPs. So I think it's different. It's not like we're shopping around projects trying to get funding and stuff. Like we are hired hands. So it's like we can work almost immediately, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all like what you consider, or what the outside world considers work, right? Like you shot I remember you shot a DWW project after
Hmm.
conservatory. You could be shooting really low budget features, which usually is how it works, right? And not those could not be on anyone's radar yet, but you're working, and you're working as a cinematographer, not as a gaffer, not as anything else.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, right after film school, I shot like 8 short films in the first year.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I was cranking that first year in terms of like narrative. And I was lucky. Like I think like a large part of after school, after AFI comes down to luck as well. Like you have to be ready for the luck, but a lot of it is right time, right place, and just the things manifest into one moment. Uh, and so I feel like, yeah, I got super lucky shooting like 8 short films basically that first year, and then it led to my first feature the year after. So I was pretty quick in terms of
Yeah.
success, if you will.
Yeah. Wait, so what was one of those cases of luck?
Well, my first feature I think was pretty lucky. Uh, my first feature was a year after AFI, but it was like steps that led to that lucky moment. So like I shot those 8 shorts, and Project Involve was a program I did where I got to shoot 2 shorts. It's Film Independence, like diversity filmmaker program, which is fantastic. And I did that within the first year out of AFI, and I met a bunch of directors, met a bunch of producers, just filmmakers in general. And one of the directors was line producing a feature called Slight, just a year after, basically. And I had just gotten back from China because I was on a documentary, uh, feature documentary, and then I like just hit up some people to meet up for coffee or whatnot, and she was one of the people. And then yeah, she at the coffee meeting was like, "Hey, we just lost our DP on this feature. It starts in like 4 weeks. Like, do you want to come in and interview?" And so I was like, "Yeah, of course. Would love to. Obviously, it's like an opportunity like that doesn't just pop up. Well, it does, I guess."
Had you
But
done any feature interviews before that?
no, that was my first one.
That was your first one and you nailed it?
It
Okay.
was my
So,
first one. Yeah. And I mean, like, I had the credit from the line producer. Marty, I worked with her as a DP. She's a director. And so I shot a short for her. So she sort of, knew me and my work and vetted me in terms of my like ability. And so, yeah, she brought me in and then I interviewed. And then, yeah, like you said, I nailed it, I guess. And then, yeah, I mean, they were also desperate probably because they just lost their DP.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, that was
Wait, they
definitely a
just lost their
moment of
DP.
luck.
How, how far out were they from shooting?
They're about 4 weeks.
Ooh.
Yeah,
So, did they make
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
decision to hire you pretty quickly?
yeah. They were definitely desperate and like needing to find somebody. So again, right place, right time, literally right time, and just a stroke of luck. And then thankfully that film did really well. It went to Sundance, uh, and it got picked up by Blumhouse and WWE, and got distributed. Was like near wide release. It was like almost 600 theaters, and so like it was kismet, and it was again fortunate luck, but I was ready to at least shoot a feature at that point.
Yeah, that's you have one of the, you know, how do you else do you say it? Like cooler stories, that doesn't really happen, in any
Yeah,
discipline. But it
yeah,
happened, and it happened. Yeah, I'd say luck in timing wise, but definitely, your work speaks for itself, and it's your previous relationships. It's not just about knowing people; it's like them knowing you and your work, right?
yeah, definitely. I think that year after AFI and during AFI, obviously, it's like the work that I put in and built up my credits and my body of work, I guess, the shorts, like, and the connections, like that, all that work did come together. It just came together quickly, right? And so yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like a short prep period, but it's your first feature, so I'm sure you're super excited. What was the biggest learning curve doing that first feature, that you like things that you had to deal with that you didn't know before from shorts or from film school? Or is it just
Yeah,
more
I
more
think
days?
I think there's a lot of there was a lot of anxiety and fear of like, oh, like, can I do this? It's a larger scope. There's a lot more days. There's a lot more time. There's a lot more pressure. Like that. I think was the biggest learning curve of like getting past that first initial fear of like, oh, can I do this? It's like it seems so daunting. It's like, oh my God, it's so many more days. It's like people are looking and watching me like work, and like they're gonna be
Hmm.
scrutinizing all my decisions, blah blah blah. But like I think you know I got over that easily once you start doing the work, and once you start actually like shooting, especially like it's just making a movie at the end of the day. It's like making a short is just the modified short version of making a feature. It's like, yeah, the exhaustion level is probably more because it's a marathon rather than like a sprint. Uh, but the work itself was the same. And I think I learned that, and that was valuable to learn to sort of calm myself down for future projects and future features. And every step I've jumped up a level, let's say, like in terms of like budget or like talent, like, name talent, et cetera, et cetera. I've had those fears and anxieties and sort of was able to rely back on those thoughts of like, you know what, like I've done this before. It is just shooting a movie, and like, you know, it's the same thing. But that doesn't mean the fear wasn't there.
Well, the fear will always be there, you know, especially if you're doing what you said and keep moving up and up in budget and scope. Otherwise, you know, it means you don't care anymore. But so the fear will
Yeah.
always be there because I know you're going to care. It's just how well do you hide it, you know,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
how do you use it, right? It's just like it's going to
Yeah.
be there. So use it for something. Use it for focus and energy, and also knowing that
Yeah.
everybody's having the same fear. The
Yeah. I
actors,
feel like I heard of I feel like I heard an interview with Deakins at some point, and he was like, I still, the night before I step onto set, like still don't know what I'm doing. Like has that feeling. And I'm like, he's Roger Deakins, you know? It's
yeah,
like, come on.
yeah. I've heard Spielberg say that. Like, still, he said the
It's
hardest part of
wild.
directing is getting out of the car in the morning, right? Knowing that you're just going to have
Yeah.
to like be confident and answer every single question. So, yeah. Wait, was there something comforting though? Because Slight, that's JD Dillard's first feature, right? So that you're
Mhm.
going through that together your first time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. You know, I feel like we were able to, I don't know, communicate and trust each other a little bit more because it was like, okay, we're both figuring this out. And, you know, there's a little bit of fear in us, but like we're figuring this out together. And I remember we would like we shot listed the whole movie basically. I remember we ended up going to like Denny's one night, like right before we had to shoot the next week or something, just to make sure we like went over everything and had the week in order because like we were a little behind. Uh, and yeah, we just had each other's back for sure.
Yeah. Also, not, you know, not your traditional like first, like, you know, indie handheld, blah blah blah. When people think of a Sundance first feature, like this is a film about a magician, a street magician. It's almost like a superhero movie, and you're doing like
Yeah.
practical, like really cool, old school, fun in camera effects. Like that must
Yeah.
have been fun. But can you talk about like coming to those decisions and how you figure those out?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing with that movie was like budget was obviously really small. I think it was under $1 million. And so like we're always trying to pull the most out of what we have. And, you know, like you said, there's a lot of practical effects, there's a lot of like special effects, but I think the script was smartly written where like they made choices in the writing process of like, okay, this is where we'll spend money. You know, like this is where we'll spend money and time. And so it was easy for our conversations because it was already written in that way. You know, it's like they made it so that like the climax of the movie has the most effects in it, you know. And then we just talked about, you know, shot wise, how can we do this most efficiently? How can we do it so that it's believable, but also getting that like heightened emotion across, you know, and just picking the shots, the specific shots where we needed those special effects, you know. Um, and yeah, we just talked about the practicality of it basically, and like the emotional journey that the protagonist is going through, so that we know exactly when those moments are.
Yeah. It's such a great example that I still, you know, use with like people that are graduating of like a great example of a first
Oh,
feature that, you know, doesn't feel low budget, doesn't feel like a first feature. There's a confidence about it. And part of it is because you're doing these very confidently told, fun in camera effects, but also the way you shot it. Like it's anamorphic, right?
it was anamorphic. Yeah, we shot on Kawas, so yeah, that was something that JD definitely wanted from the beginning. You know, to also I think heighten uh, the bigger budget of it, you know, like the scope of it.
Yeah.
Even though it's like it's a coming of age story that's set in like a lot of houses and like, you know, around LA, the city, like it has a bigger feel than it is. You know, I think you feel that LA is a little bigger than what those first movies could be.
Yeah. Yeah. You totally killed it. And it must be fun to shoot anamorphic, you know, on your first feature, especially because it's just something about it that just is like feels more cinematic, you know?
It does. It does. Anamorphic is pretty great. Yeah, it was really fun to do. And then I luckily have been shooting a lot of anamorphic for most of the features, even the low budget stuff that I've worked on. So yeah, I've been
Yeah.
very fortunate for that.
Is that what happens? Like, so then, you know, everybody saw Slight and they talked about it, and that's the thing the first thing, professional thing they see of yours, and then you get you get asked to do more anamorphic because you killed it with that?
I think it's more that they see that I have a certain style, I guess, after that, or they see that and then they see that I have they like that look, and then they sort of like, want something that is similar to that in some way,
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I guess the stories that sort of come to me also lend itself to be more anamorphic and more heightened than the like, regular world is. So yeah, I don't think it's like specifically people are like, oh, you shot anamorphic on Slate. I want to shoot anamorphic. It's more like, oh, I saw that movie that you shot. Like it had a good vibe to it. Like, what did you do? And then we would talk about it potentially, and then we would obviously talk about what the script that we're interviewing on actually needs and what it actually works best for that script, obviously. So
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, so let's go back a little. Like, since this is called After Film School, I got to hear a little bit about film school. But even before film school, like, what was the? I'm always curious about people that are not directors. Like, what's the thing? What's the moment, if you can remember, when you realized that cinematography was one of the most important parts of filmmaking? Was there a movie you saw? Someone tell you about it?
yeah. Well, I always had that question in my mind. I think that was a big reason why I became a DP. I was always questioning, like, what is it about Hollywood movies or movies that I'm seeing in theaters or on my home television or whatever? Like, why are these movies look the way that they do, and why don't my movies look like that? And I always had that question in undergrad when I made that decision to become a DP. Uh, and there were a couple moments, I guess. The first moment was like, I had that question, and so I bought a book. It was like something like, "What do you really want to do in Hollywood?" or something like that. And I was like flipping through the book and reading the book, and then I read the cinematographer's, you know, line, and it was like, "This person's in charge of the visual aspects of the film, all of the visual aspects." And I'm like, "Oh, that's the person that actually like does it, that has the magic sauce." And so that's when I learned about what a cinematographer is. And so I started shooting when I was an undergrad, and I bought a DSLR, bought a 5D Mark II, and then yeah, I was sort of became the person that shot all the films at Indiana University. They didn't have a film program, so I did like telecommunication and communications and culture. And there was a bunch of students though that wanted to make films and make movies, and so we all sort of banded together, and there was a couple different groups around. But like, yeah, they all sort of saw me as the one that wanted to be a DP. So I ended up shooting someone's like thesis film, like an independent study thesis film. I ended up shooting a bunch of music videos, weddings, just whatever I could do to shoot, and
Yeah,
make money.
yeah,
Um, and so I remember the one moment that I sort of solidified me like being like, okay, I really want to be a DP was like, I remember shooting a short, didn't know what the hell I was doing, obviously. But I knew like I wanted to light things in some way. And so like we had a lull kit with like a couple of just hard lights. I forget what they're called, but I gelled them up and like I threw them up, and I was by myself, so I was like running back and forth from the camera to the light and then like tweaking it and then like moving it, and then like I just remember the moment when I ran back and then the light set the light, and then I looked at it, and it was like for this skip reflection like backlighting, and it was like recognizing that this light has an effect once it like hits a certain spot, and it's reflecting off like the glossy floor, and like it's colored, and it had like you get the emotion out of it just by seeing that light in that spot. And that's, I think, one of the moments where I actually knew I was like, okay, this is cool, like this is what I want to do, I want to be a cinematographer, and like I really enjoy looking at light. So I think those are probably the moments that were very stuck in my mind about I want to be a DP.
that's a cool story. I love that. I love that you like literally like you went to the light of cinematography through the light. Like that's such a
Literally.
movie moment. It would be like the Fablemans, the Ed Wu Fablemans.
Yeah, exactly. See me at a DSLR, looking at the lens. Move over on the other side. Put it up. Come back. Oh.
uh,
Yeah.
so you went to Indiana?
Yeah, Indiana University.
Are those the Hoosiers or is that University of Indiana?
Yeah, it's the Hoosiers.
So you're a Hoosier, huh? Wow. All
Honorary
right.
Hoosier. Not
Honorary
born
Hoosier.
and bred, but
Yeah, well.
honorary.
But and where are you from?
I grew up in New York. I
New
grew
York.
up on Long Island.
Okay.
Yeah,
No accent. Wow.
no accent. Lost that long time ago.
Did you used
I
to
never
have
had
like
it.
oh,
Yeah,
okay. I was gonna say, because that's such an accent, right?
it is. It is. My sister has one. Her husband is Italian Irish, so that whole family sort of, I think, ended up giving her an accent in some way, just
Right.
because she's around it so much.
So how soon after Indiana did you start thinking of grad school?
Uh, Good question. So I finished Indiana. I moved out to LA immediately, basically. Again, another fortunate luck situation was uh, a mentor of mine in Indiana, a DP who shoots like commercials and movies in Indiana, uh, was shooting a movie in LA the same month that me and a group of other Indiana people were moving out to LA. And so he was like, "Oh, do you want to work on this?" And so we worked for free, but he got a bunch of labor. We got a lot of experience and connections in LA. And so just another story for just luck, being in the right place, right time, but setting up connections and whatnot.
And it got you out
But
to LA. Physically got you
it
out to
got me
LA.
out to LA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And then got me contacts too, because like after that unpaid job, the same blind producers got hired me for their next features. I got paid minimum wage PAing, but it was something. Actually, I was second ACing on that, so I got
Hmm.
into the camera department almost immediately. Um, Anyways, so I went to AFI basically a year after, and the reason why I did that was because I had that intention of like I want to be a DP, I want to shoot movies because of all the stuff we talked about. But so a lot of those features that I worked on, the DPs were AFI DPs, and so they were like,
Oh.
"Oh, if you want to be a DP, like go to AFI. It's a great program." I had no idea what AFI was at the time. I had never even heard of it, but I looked into it, and yeah, I mean, like they do crank out great cinematographers. And
Wait, do you
so
remember who were some of those DPs?
Amanda Trey's is the one that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Still keep in touch. Um, but yeah, Amanda was one of those people that told me, was like, yeah, if you want to be a DP, go to AFI. You'll get the best education there for cinematography.
Cool. So you came to AFI. I mean, you got in obviously. You came to AFI with undergrad experience and some real life experience working in camera. Talk about getting to AFI. I always remember like that thing that we call real day. I'm going to try to explain
Hmm. Oh
things for the
yeah.
podcast that we shouldn't assume that everyone knows, but real day is when the whole like incoming class, it's like the second day of their time at AFI. They don't even know each other. We put them in the big theater all day and they all have like 5 minutes to show something that they did before they got to AFI. Right. And for most
Uh huh.
people, it's their first time seeing their work on the big screen in a movie theater, and they're showing stuff to their classmates, and everybody has imposter syndrome and everybody wants to throw up.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
I
yeah.
I always look at the cinematographer's reels and marvel and think, why are you in film school? Because they're always so accomplished. But tell us what was going through your head that day?
Yeah, I mean, it is super intimidating for sure. I feel like watching any movie that you do, you are super vulnerable and like you're super anxious and worried of like getting judged for your work. I think any artist, right? Like any discipline and any artist will think the same way. So I was definitely anxious and nervous.
But what's funny about that
But
setting is it's literally the whole point of it is so you can judge each other. It's
yeah,
so
that
that
is
you can
true. Yeah,
start
we're literally judging.
it's so you can start teaming for your first project together. So you're like
Yeah.
literally people are taking notes on like, oh yeah.
And I also feel like right after that, like immediately after that, we have to like go around the lobby and like pitch to each other, like and like meet, network with each team to try to like interview with them, get an interview. And so it's
Yeah.
like even more pressure on top of that. Yeah, that day was super nerve wracking. I think everyone was super nervous and really, yeah, just really tough. Uh, but yeah, I think I don't know. That day was I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but that day was hard, but we got through it. I guess.
But
Like,
I always think like, yeah, it's really hard, stressful, like, everybody freaks out and it's really long. But at the end of that day, everybody knows each other a little bit and knows each other through their work, and they've had conversations, and it actually ends up like a really kind of nice, like kind of in a way, like bonds people for the next 2 years.
that is true. It is helpful to meet people and see just other people's like what is it called? Their vibe, what they're interested in telling and movie making and what their styles are. Like even on that like day with like, everyone showing something that they've done, like you can still sort of get a glimmer of like what type of stories do they want to tell or what are they, sort of into, what are they interested in, like just by that first initial whatever 2 to 5 minute whatever scenes that they're showing. I showed my reel at the time, and like it was a bunch of like different things, music videos and short films and just a bunch of different even I think some wedding stuff even was in there. I feel like I went into AFI like less experienced than most. I feel like in terms of like actual cinematography, I actually heard a rumor from Stephen Lighthill at some point that like I almost didn't get in. Uh, and I was one of the last people to get chosen to get in, and they chose me because of my narrative statement and like my background as a musician. I played violin for a very long time. I thought I was going to be a classical musician, uh, and I think that they, saw that I didn't have as much experience shooting as a cinematographer. Like we were saying, most people's reels are like, gorgeous and whatnot, and they have a lot of experience. But like I came in as a DSLR shooter, as like a videographer, and it was my narrative statement that really, I think, got me into the school, which was cool to hear.
Wait, and why do you think it was? Like, what it was in that narrative statement that won them over?
I think it was super personal. I think that's when people ask me like for advice about their narrative statement. Uh, that's what I tell them. That's actually what Amanda told me as well. When I asked her, was like, make your narrative statement as personal as possible because you know that's what's gonna connect you to the reader, Stephen Lighthill or whoever's reading your narrative statement, rather than like trying to show that you've like the work that you've done before, like try to prove that you are worthy of being in the program. It's about what is your background and why did you choose to become a cinematographer or why did you choose to switch your path from music or whatnot. Or what for me when I wrote my narrative statement was like why I was so passionate about music and the feelings and evoking emotions through my instrument and practicing and like when everything comes together and you're in the concert hall and everyone's humming at the same tune and at the same speed and everything, like everyone's on the same page. And I related how that is similar to filmmaking, and that's a big reason why I changed over. And I also think that filmmaking, is everlasting versus like a fleeting art. Like it is cool for fleeting uh, arts like music, where it's like you go to a performance and like you sit there and you get that one performance, and it could be great, it could be not great, it could be fantastic, But once you get that, besides a recording, like it's gone, right? But like a movie, you do it and it sort of lasts there forever, hopefully. So
That's, I mean, very well said. Wow. Yeah, I want to let you into AFI now based on that narrative statement you just
boom.
performed. No,
And
but I get
that's
it. But
why I
I
got
also, I
into
think that
AFI.
like, yeah, there's something to that also, when you're reading, 50 applications and for one discipline, cinematography, and they're all talking about how when they saw Lawrence of Arabia, it blew, they wanted to become a cinematographer. And then someone talks about, was on a different track to become a classical violinist. That's a big that you go, oh, wait, who's this person? That's a huge
Mhm.
shift. So wait, let's go back to that. When did that shift happen?
Yeah, so I think the biggest shift was my senior year in high school. I did this senior year club called Video Yearbook, and that's when I got my hands on a camera. But it was mainly the editing that I actually fell in love with at first. Like, I would sit in the editing room with this advisor from like 2 p.m. to like 10 p.m. some nights. And it was like my car, his car, and the principal's car were like the only cars left on campus. I was really nerdy, in that regard. But we would like shoot, typical yearbook type like segments. Like we would shoot the prom, we would shoot like homecoming, blah 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 blah. But then we would do some like the great part about the advisor Roger Paquette and the teacher was like he let us do things that we were interested in as well. Like I shot this lightsaber battle between like Darth Vader and a teacher at the school who was super into Star Wars, so he was super into it. And then like editing that and like putting in the lightsabers, like I did like 24 hours of just like straight After Effects stuff, like making the lightsabers glow and whatnot. And like, it was cool to be able to make something and like put it together. And that was the first time like I got to do that, besides making music, obviously. And so that club really, I think, like opened my eyes to, okay, there's something with video production, editing, shooting, blah, 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 that like I'm really interested in, like that I can get into that flow state of being in, my own world for hours and hours and hours. It's very similar to music for sure. And then, yeah, led to me going to Indiana, thinking I was going to go there for music, then really good music school. I got waitlisted, but I really love the campus and I really love the school itself. So I decided to go. And then the other part of the story where I said earlier, where that was the other transition that I wanted to go into, that I needed to figure out why my stuff doesn't look like the
Yeah.
Hollywood movie stuff.
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting. There's something too about I see it in, I'm gonna say specifically AFI, but people that come in with a background with music like you, like serious music like you, or athletics, where they have this
mm-hmm,
focus, right? And they have this discipline to whatever it is that they choose, whether it's, athletic sports or music, or then they come to AFI and it's movies. And they're always
mm-hmm,
the best filmmakers, the best students because of that. Like they know how to, or they're, I don't know if it's, how to do it, or you just get used to it, or it's something that you're born with. I don't know, but they commit, right?
mm-hmm.
It's this 100% focus. And, I'm sure you're an amazing violinist, but there's probably something so much more freeing and that you love more about filmmaking because, when you're getting ready for a concert, you're playing the same piece over and over and over and over and over, right? To get it
Mm-hmm.
perfect for that performance, which is great. But, and then when you're done, you're done. But with filmmaking, it's always a new challenge, right? You never get it. You can do 100, you can do 1,000, of the same dolly shot, and you're never going to get it exactly right. And that's the beauty of it, is there's so much improvisation within filmmaking, even within the structure of it.
Yeah,
Not a question there.
that's
I'm just
funny that you.
talking.
No, no, no. That's funny that you say that because it's in undergrad. I focus also on my athletic side of me as well. I played ultimate frisbee competitively, would travel to tournaments, went to nationals, and so like I played at the high level as well there. And yeah, I think that both my skills as a musician and my skills as a athlete do translate really well to being a cinematographer. It's like, yeah, I have the emotions and the rhythm and the transporting your thoughts and your emotions into another vehicle, either the instrument or the lens or the camera or the light. But also the physical part of being an athlete, where, like as a cinematographer, we have to move the camera. We have to think about how we're going to move our bodies or the camera in a way to get it to execute a certain shot or an emotion or evoke a certain way, a certain thing. Music is also similar to that, playing an instrument at least as well, and performing. Like you have to move your body in a certain way in order to get a certain texture or a certain feeling, right? And so both, yeah, athletics, music, and cinematography all sort of have those things, those skills, those soft skills there, you know. And like, yeah, I went to AFI to learn the hard skills of like, what is the craft of cinematography? Like, what are the tools at my hand on my hands that I can use to get those emotions and whatnot, and how to tell a story. Um, and yeah, what uh, skills can I learn from going back to school, basically, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, people don't talk
Yeah.
about that enough. The physical toll, or the physical, not toll, but the physical part of cinematography, of moving your body. You know, and sometimes a lot of it is handheld, but you're another performer, right? When you're doing those
Yeah.
things.
There's so
Yeah.
many times on set where like I close my eyes. People always, yeah, my crew always like looks at me. They're like, "Oh, he's going into that mode again." But like, yeah, I close my eyes, and then like I just have to be like, guys, like, give me 2 seconds. I close my eyes, and I just picture like, okay, how is this jib gonna move? How is this gonna telescope out? How's this gonna go up? Like, and like picturing the shot and the rhythm and the movement and like how are these all these things gonna come together to get execute the shot that I'm thinking, you know? Um, and that comes from athletics and music for sure, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I actually never heard another cinematographer say that before. I would want that from my cinematographer. Go close your eyes and
Yeah.
visualize this. And now let's go
Yeah.
shoot it. Yeah. Now the other part that leads to both, I mean, this is beautiful analogies or metaphors, whichever one. Um, Music, and I should say maybe orchestra and sports, is the teamwork part, the collaboration part, right? You,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ultimate frisbee is a team sport. You know, playing the violin, you
Mm-hmm.
were in an orchestra, so you weren't like, you know, the solo guy playing the guitar in a coffee shop. You were part of ensembles with both of those, and AFI, big part of it. We preach it. It's hard to teach, but it's collaboration. It's usually taught by you going out and making movies with other filmmakers, and then either succeeding or failing and learning through that. So let's talk about that part. And maybe let's start with, you remember in that first year in your cycle projects, was there a bad collaboration? Was there an unsuccessful one that you learned from? And I'm not asking any to name any names.
Throwing out names. Who are my cycle directors?
Of
I don't know. I was
course,
for
you should go right to
I
directors.
okay. Yeah, right. I feel like okay. How am I gonna talk about this? So I feel like one of my assets as a cinematographer is that I try to get along with people. You know, like I think there are DPs that are hard to work with, right? There are people that are hard to work with in some way. I have always been someone trying to please other people, which is also a good and a bad thing, you know? Like it's great because I'm not making a huge issue or problem for, you know, this job, for the job. On the other side of things, you know, it's like trying to please other people, I lose a lot of my happiness sometimes, you know. So like full honesty here, it's like, yeah, I love the teamwork stuff, but at the same time, like it's also one of my least favorite parts of the job, where like just dealing with people and like having to like, you know, collaborate and work together. It is can be the best thing in the world, but it can also be the worst thing because it's like, yeah, when you're not on the same page, like a lot of emotions get brought up and you have to deal with those, you know, and especially at grad school when it's mostly people that are still young in 20s and 30s, like we are even more, you know, more vulnerable to our emotions and don't know how to cope with it a lot, you know. And I feel like at AFI, a lot of stress was built on that. Um, I'm just trying to figure out how to communicate with people and how to be in a work environment to get what we want, but also get what the director wants. Because ultimately, I think the cinematographer is there for the director, and we're there to get their vision on the screen, and then also to help out and to elevate that as much as possible. You know, and I think at grad school, to answer your question of were there any bad collaborations, there were, but I'm not going to speak about it them too much because I think that yeah, I think that trying to work with each other and trying to get past your own emotions is the advice I would give. You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And that is actually it's super honest of you to say, collaboration is hard and you don't always love it, right? Especially if you're someone like yourself who is easy to get along with. Sometimes that you can get taken advantage of, or sometimes your vision gets compromised, right? If you always defer to
Yeah.
others. But it is when you're the cinematographer, when you're the director of photography, part of the job is you are the manager. You're the
Hmm.
manager of a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's knowing when to push back and when to be that person that is assertive, not an asshole, but assertive in what you need or want and what is ultimately important for the movie or the story or for the vision, right? Like we're all fighting time, money, and quality. And so if we can know when to fight for those things, that's when the communication, like that's when I'll actually like speak up and fight for something, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I learned that at AFI. I think, that's the groundwork was laid there for going back to grad school to some extent. It's like just collaborating with people and working with people and trying to figure out what my techniques and skills can be and how to effectively talk to people. I think that AFI helped a lot with that because there's so much hands-on actual production, at AFI.
Yeah. So a big part of AFI, I know, is getting critiqued on your work, right? And that can be
Mm.
shocking and brand new to a lot of the AFI students, to students in general, to people in general. I mean, adults. Nobody loves that,
Yeah.
right? But it's a big part of AFI. But it's an even bigger part of the cinematography program, namely one Bill Dill.
Oh yeah. Bill
Can you talk
Dill.
about like that, like maybe your
Yeah.
what you learned from him and what taking those critiques that can feel really hard, but then that cinematographers seem to really embrace and love.
Yeah. It's the best class there for cinematographers. Narrative workshop is really great. Narrative workshop is when all the students critique each other. Uh, for those that are listening, but Bill Dill's class is this professor. He watches your film, and then he'll watch it through once, and then he'll go back, play it, and pause the movie whenever he feels like there's something that could have been different or improved, or there was something that was not working for the story, and he just hits you so hard of like dissecting your movies because of the story and the visual storytelling in the movie. And it is brutal. There are people that are crying in the class sometimes because it's so hard on them. But at the end of the day, and what he says in his first class, it's like he does it because he loves us and he's trying to help us become better cinematographers. And he's tried different ways and approaches to that class where he's either nicer or, or more direct. And he learned that the more direct approach, the students tend to learn more from it. And I wholeheartedly agree about that because I think it's very rare for us to actually get a critical eye on our work, and for people to actually say what they think about the movie and like what can be improved, what can be different, what didn't work for them. And it's the one of the only times I think at AFI, not AFI, one of the only times in our lives where like it is assessed that critically. Um, and so yeah, for me it was amazing. It's like I think I learned so much in that class, of how to be a visual storyteller and not just someone who shoots pretty images. It's like why are we making the choices that we're making, to tell the story. And yeah, why is the camera here? Why is the camera at this height? All these things that are going through our mind of like making these choices on set. It all comes back to that class where, you know, uh, these are the decisions that you're making, and uh, the story reasons why you're making those.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, the class is great, and Bill Dills has gone back in generations, and like I've met AFI people from like the '90s that were bonding about like Bill Dillisms, as we call them, where it was like these things, these lines that he always says. And so yeah, Bill Dill is a generational teacher.
He's the great uniter through trauma.
Yeah. AFI
but
cinematography
truly, yeah,
trauma.
truly a gift of a teacher. Um, and you're right, because he is really the one that instills. Like, if you didn't know who he was and you went and sat in that class, you could go through a whole class and go, wait, when is he going to talk about cinematography? Because he really focuses on story. He makes the
Hmm.
cinematographers storytellers, right?
Hmm.
And I always go, like, I can tell us an AFI cinematographer in the wild because they'll ask those questions of a director, like, why? Like, why do you want the camera there? Let's talk about why. What does that mean to the story at this point? What does that mean to the characters? Like, whose point of view is it? And some directors can't handle it. They're just like, because it'll be cool, and that's what you learn in that class. That's not what it's about. He doesn't care
Yeah.
about cool. He doesn't care about cool shots.
Yeah, it's all in service of the story and why we are telling the stories and how we're telling the stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So 2 years at AFI, like, what is like one or a couple of the most, biggest things that you learned that you didn't know before AFI?
There's a lot of things I didn't know and learn. Uh, I think I could break it down to like there's the technical stuff that I learned, like the lighting thing, the lighting side, what is light, how to shape it, like how is what is the physics of light, what is the tools that we have to manipulate the light, and like yeah, so lighting, camera side of like what is going on in the internals of the camera, how is the process of from hitting the coming into the lens, hitting the sensor, and then like getting to the end of the pipeline, like uh learning all the technical stuff was huge for me because like I did not I was techie and I would be interested in it, but I feel like I didn't have a full rounded large picture of what I needed to learn. You know, it's like there's so much information on the internet, and that's a lot of where I was learning uh, my uh, knowledge. But you know, it's so scattered, and you don't have a full picture of like what is cinematography, you know, and what are the tools that we have, what is it, and what how can we use it. And so I think AFI really gave me uh, that system to learn and that larger picture of the approach. But the other side of things, other than the technical, is the storytelling stuff. Like it was huge in terms of learning about what is a good story, what is plot, like what are story devices. Like I was not much of a literature person growing up. I didn't read a lot. I enjoyed it, but like I didn't read a lot. I didn't break down and dissect story. And so coming in, I was pretty green to it. And I think with how AFI teaches visual storytelling and teaches narrative storytelling, they just focus on it so much and they hammer it into you that like this is what makes good movies. You know, it's not about the flashy cinematography, it's not about the like tools that you're using. Those are all just uh, tools to get you to evoke emotions so that you can connect with the story at hand. Um, so yeah, the narrative storytelling part of it was I think the most beneficial thing I got out of AFI.
Yeah. You probably never look at movies the same way again after AFI, right?
No, definitely not. You're always like, what's the POV of this camera? Yeah, why is this camera over here? Yeah, for sure.
I know. What I meant is it kind of ruins movies for you.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, that's what makes the good ones great, right? Like you just get lost in the movies. I feel like all filmmakers say that, but like yeah, like when you just your brain turns off and you're like, wow, this is just fun. This is just entertaining. This is just meaningful. This is impactful. Like that's what makes good movies. So,
Yeah. All right. So we'll we're going to head towards the end by talking about right after film school, because that's what, we really want the focus to be kind of like you went to film school. How do you get a career though going after film school? And you talked about that first feature, but the film independent program that you did, like that was kind of that leads to that, right? So talk about like things like that, programs like that, and how they are little shots of momentum to keep the career going and going in the right way?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a tough question to answer because A, a lot of luck comes in, and B, like I have so many stories of friends that like are super talented, but they're not shooting, narrative features or narrative storytelling as much as I am, and like I don't know the reason. It's like I think everyone tries to ask that and try to figure out like what do I do to get into movies and to get to work up the ladder? It's like I honestly don't have an answer to that. I've thought about it a lot. I've tried to think about like why I got into the spot that I am, and it's like, yeah, I did Project Involve. I think that's one great thing to do. I think it's, what, let me rewind. I think one of the best things that you can do to increase your chances, and I think that is the best advice I can give, increase the amount of opportunities and chances for you to try to get success. Uh, the path of that, I can't answer too much except for my own personal path, which is I went to Project Involve. I did as much as I could there. I went to as many of those sessions as I could to meet people and to just hang out and to make movies. I tried to keep in touch with people in terms of like going out to lunch and going out to coffee, just kind of hitting people up every once in a while. Um, and like just trying to increase the amount of opportunities for a success to happen, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah. No, that's a great
Yeah,
answer.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you talked about you also shot eight shorts your first year out of AFI. Did you make a
Hmm.
conscious decision to only take director of photography jobs? Like you weren't going to do anything below that?
That's a good question. No, actually, yeah, I definitely crewed within that first year out of AFI before I shot my first feature. Even probably 2 to 3 years out, I still crewed. Uh, but yeah, I gaffed for my friends. I operated for my friends. I don't think I ever AC'd unless it was really someone that was in need, but I don't think that really happened. But I definitely gaffed and I definitely operated. And I got jobs out of that too as a DP. Like I met the directors on those, and like I don't know how or why I haven't. The operating jobs more so I think it happens where like they just saw me as someone that was had capabilities as a DP, and so they hired me as a DP on that. One job also like I gaffed. I think it was a Craigslist ad potentially, but the DP was an AFI grad. It was a short, and he recommended me for a feature after that he couldn't do, and I got my union days from that show. So another stroke of luck and good fortune, but like yeah, crewing can lead to other opportunities somehow, some way.
Good. But you didn't have to take any other kind of job besides working in some way in the camera department, right? Yeah. Good.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I never had to work a non-film job after AFI.
Now I was looking at your credits since AFI, and you've got some wild ones. I mean, obviously, the Sundance ones; those are really cool. But I saw one on here. You shot a master class with Alex Honnold about
Hmm.
rock climbing.
Yeah, I shot a bunch of master classes. Actually, speaking of that, I was an operator on master class for years. My friend Key from my year, Key Sung Kyung, he was operating on it, so he recommended me to come in, and I operated for them for like 4 or 5 years, and then they bumped me up to DP the last like 2 or 3 years, and I shot yeah Alex Honnold and Tommy Caldwell, which was really cool. I
Wait, actually,
shot
you
Simone
just
Biles.
reminded me. You just reminded me because I watched the Ron Howard one, and you're in it.
Oh yeah,
You're
I
in
am in
it.
the Ron Howard one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's like the 50-50 is a great confrontational angle, and then he pats me
Yes.
on the back.
Yeah. Well, and that leads to something else I want to talk about because you are very distinctive looking, and you know, let me
True,
unpack
true,
that
true, true.
in that you have,
For the
I should
audio
say,
viewers.
yeah, I know, like this could get questionable. No, you had an orange mohawk for the longest time, right? And it was like a
Yeah.
trademark. And did you wait?
Yeah.
Did you had it at AFI? You had some form of a mohawk? Yeah.
Yeah. I've had a mohawk. Orange. I had a mohawk, orange mohawk, since my second year at undergrad. So yeah.
Okay. So it was like you. That was just you just liked it, right?
I
It
mean,
was
there was okay.
to tell
It
me the
was.
real
It
story because
was.
I always think like if it was just tactical, it's brilliant because it was so memorable, and I would always go Ed Wu. That's Ed Wu. That's Ed Wu.
Yeah.
And I saw you on the Ryan Howard thing. I'm like, oh my god, there's Ed Wu.
It
But
was
tell me the
both. It
backstory.
was both. It was both. I mean, I had an infatuation with orange before an orange mohawk. I was like the orange person back in high school. And I think that I sort of just latched onto this identity, for better or worse, of like, oh, this orange thing is me and people know me for that, you know? And then the orange mohawk was the next progression of like, okay, well, you know, I my hair can look cool. I like orange, and so I'll cut it into a mohawk and I'll dye it orange. And then yeah, it was another yeah, like you said, it's kind of a brand. Is sort of what it became. I think I like ultimate frisbee. Like I got all region. I was a good player for sure, and an all region player probably. But like people knew me as the orange mohawk guy. They're like, oh, the guy in Indiana. Like, yeah, he's really good. So I knew that it was a thing that was like iconic that people could know me about. And so whether that was conscious or subconscious of like a brand, it was probably a little bit of both. But yeah, it is helpful to be noteworthy. Hopefully my work also speaks for itself. But any other opportunity to like show that like, okay, well, you to get in someone's mind and get in their memory, like that is also a good thing to do.
Yeah. Well, the work is always going to be the ultimate, decider. But yeah, to be memorable to for people, as you're especially in those years when you're starting out and you're networking and it's about that, it's about building relationships. Um, I I I don't know. I don't. I didn't know if it was intentional or a style thing, but it's nice that it's both. It never felt. Is the thing is it never felt inauthentic. It felt like you,
Yeah,
right? Um,
exactly.
yeah, which I
Exactly.
loved. And but
And I
I
feel like
also
it's the
thought,
same thing with like Matty Libatique and his hair. His hair is like he's
yes,
like Matty Libatique, the spiky hair. It's
big
like
spiky
that is
hair.
his
Yeah,
thing.
no,
He's like him. So
I'm always like you got to find your thing. Like nobody else can do the orange mohawk. You did that, but like it's like
yeah,
a hat or it's like some kind of thing that people go, oh yeah, that's the thing. That's that guy.
Yoko's the green lime green
Oh
colored.
my god, yeah.
Everything.
If you and Yoko combined forces, it would just be this green orange, explosion.
Exactly.
Um, was it ever when you were in those? Wait, so tell us, are you done with the mohawk? Because last time I saw you, your hair was like this, and
Yep, it is now down. It is
I
now
love it.
just a regular haircut, but it's still orange. I mean, orange is, I think, it's still pretty iconic.
Yeah. To the point of your bio on IMDb, it says Ed Wu, orange mohawk cinematographer.
Yep, exactly, exactly.
I love it. I
Branding.
love it. When you were in like prime mohawk days, was it ever a hindrance? Like you was like, oh, I can't get under that like overhang because my hair is gonna hit it if you were operating.
No, I'm 5'6". I think I'm pretty short compared to those other people. So Mohawk is like not going to give me that many inches.
You know what? I'm 5'6" too, so I should have done a mohawk a long time ago because it adds a couple
Yeah,
inches. It's here for the short kings.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Oh God.
wait, I brought up the Alex Honnold thing. I haven't seen that masterclass, but did it involve you getting on the side of a mountain?
I did not have to get on a mountain, but my
Oh,
operators were like rock climbing operators. There are the ones that some of them were the ones that worked on Free Solo, I think.
oh, okay.
Uh, and yeah, those people are wild. They're like, yeah, they just go up there, they top rope in, and then they like use the rope to pull up the camera to them, and then they like when they want to switch a battery, they clip it to their harness and they just let it hang while they're like grabbing the cards or the batteries, and then they like pull it back up. Yeah, definitely wild. But I
That
was not
is
up there.
that is too much anxiety for me. Okay, so tell us what you've been up to recently. You were back at Sundance, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
last month. What have you
Yeah,
been up to?
recently I was at Sundance for a film called Pony Boy. And so hopefully that'll come out later this year. And then I have another movie coming out in May near Mother's Day called Mother of the Bride. It's got Brooke Shields and Benjamin Bratt in it.
Oh wow,
Uh,
that's
yeah,
cool.
that was
That's a
fun.
cool cast.
Shot in Thailand. Yeah, it was
Wow.
great. Great time.
Where's that going to be?
That'll be on Netflix.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Is that your
So
biggest
those are
budget
the things
one?
that are. My biggest budget was a movie called End of the Road. It had Queen Latifah and Ludacris in it, also for Netflix. It was like 20 something million dollars. So yeah.
Mm. So you're comfortable in that world now. You're like $20 million, movie stars.
Yeah, I am comfortable. I mean, so, like I was saying earlier, like surprisingly, like, well, I had anxiety going in, thinking like, oh, can I do this? Like, can I handle a $20 million budget? What is this going to be like? And so, yeah, I was super nervous. But then after doing it, and like what everyone says when they come into our classes and whatnot, it's like it's just making a movie still. Like it is the same. The day to day is still the same, even at that level. It's like, yeah, you have more toys, you have more time, like you have bigger talent, but like the filmmaking part of it, like you're still just shooting a cam with a camera, you're still lighting, and you're still fighting the sun. Like, and so yeah, when people say that, like it is the same. It is the same filmmaking. Like it is actually true.
That's so yeah, beautiful, beautiful. That's a great note to end on. I'll just ask this. So just because we will do this again, and we'll get more into like your recent films and get more into that because I always
Yeah.
love talking to cinematographers about working with talent because they're so close to the actors and that'll be for next time.
Mm-hmm.
So but let's take it back
Sweet.
to film school. In you know now that you have seems like a no brainer answer, but would you recommend film school to a young filmmaker?
Surprisingly, I don't know if I would answer exactly the way that you're thinking. Not as much as a no-brainer. I think that
Mm,
it depends on you as a person. Like for me, what I wanted was structure. I wanted a system where I knew that I was going to get the information that I wanted in a efficient way, and I knew that I wanted to accelerate my learning, you know, and my hopefully by the end of it, like my status and being known as a cinematographer. And so, like, I think it comes down to what do you want out of it? What do you think you'll get out of it? And is it right for you? You know, because I don't think it's right for everybody. Maybe people don't want their own, maybe they don't want that system. You know, they don't want to be like tethered down to being in the system for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And they'd rather be on the field working and making money and learning on the fly. So I think it depends on you as a person and what you want out of it. Uh, and so, yeah, I would say that for me, it was fantastic. Like I got so much out of it. I got so many contacts. I got so much knowledge and information, experience. I got credit afterwards as being a DP. Like there was a lot of things that benefited me, but it might not be best for other people. So
yeah,
you gotta evaluate that and figure that out.
that's great advice. And actually, that is the answer I always give. It's just like, what do you expect out of it? Like, yeah, you have to know that because some people that come in expecting like, they're just gonna, especially, a director coming out and thinking they're gonna direct, go to Paramount and get a 3 picture deal. You gotta go,
Mm-hmm.
not gonna happen. But okay, and then the
Yeah.
last question is, what's like the one thing that you would one piece of advice you would give to someone leaving film school to help start their career?
Leaving film school to start their career. I mean, I think I sort of said it before. I think maximize your opportunities and increase your percentage of opportunities of success.
Yeah.
Like put yourself in places where you will just have more opportunities to make it. Whether that's like going to things or meeting people. I mean, that part sucks. I hate that part, the networking and whatnot. But like, I think one word of advice that I got recently, actually, before going to Sundance, from a friend named Jomo Frey, fantastic DP, uh, going to Sundance was like, if you can make one connection and have a genuine conversation at the event that you're at, like that's worth way more than trying to see who's going to benefit you the most, you know, at the party, and always being not present and like looking to other people and like, who can I talk to, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, I think the more and more out of AFI that I am, it's like I try to have more honest connections with people and genuine connections, because that I think will help actually get people to hire you or to want to work with you more. So
That's really good advice from Jomo, and I would agree with that. Yeah, yeah.
me too.
Because yeah, those when you think of it as networking, going to those things, then it takes all the joy out of it. But
Yeah.
when you have like an actual real conversation with someone, and obviously you have a shared interest and love because you're both at some kind of film event, uh,
Mm-hmm.
there you did not waste a night. It did not feel, you know, dirty that you were trying to like get a job. You were just like connecting with someone, and you know,
Yeah.
whether it leads to
And
something
what
or
is
not.
success? Yeah. What's success there too? It's like, I think that was also helping me get over that anxiety and that annoyance of like having to network, is like success can be one, just having one conversation, good conversation with somebody. You know, it's like, if that was your goal and that's what you got, and if something happens after that, great. But like, if I had one good conversation with somebody, then like it was a success. So yeah,
I love it, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your like honest, heartfelt, like really authentic answers and being, you know,
oh.
and not naming names when I asked you for some dirt.
Thanks
That's why you're the best,
for
Ed.
having me,
Yeah.
Schwartzy. Yeah, you got to play the political game too, you know?
Oh, of course, of course. And that's the lesson that hopefully people will learn by you not saying anything. You're smart. You're better than me.
Yeah,
Ed, I love you. I'll see you soon in person.
sounds good. Thanks for having me, Schwartzy.
All right, man. Take care.
See ya.
Bye. Oh, look at
That was wild.
what is your visual effects budget?
Yeah. All
Take
right,
care.
dude. See ya.
Bye.